for me, time doesn't pass. It retreats, it recedes, and then it comes forward. It snaps back when it's relevant to something that's in your head or something that happens. Right out of college, I went to Wellesley, and almost the day I got out, I think I did take a little bit of a vacation with my mother and my younger brother, who were going to someplace on the Jersey Shore. But as soon as that was over, I started looking for a job, and the New York Sun was an evening paper at that time. I'm talking about the mid-40s. And I knew someone who, I had some kind of connection to someone on the Sun, and I forget what it was. I think it was friends of my parents. Anyway, Mr. Blitzer, who wanted me to call him Max, said he knew a columnist on the New York Sun, and if I was really interested in newspaper work, he would arrange an interview for me. And I said, yes, I really am. And that was it. And the job was as a copy girl. And I think what they paid at that time, and I'm talking about the 40s, was $17.50 a week or something. It could just barely, buy your lunch every day. And my family lived in Kingsbridge at the time, or Riverdale, whichever you want to call it. So I had this long commute from 241st Street down to Chambers Street and Broadway. And I loved it. There were a whole bunch of copy kids, both there were girls. Usually it had been boys, but this was after the war, and they had started taking girls during the war, and so they kept that up. And fortunately, it was very discriminatory, I think. But we didn't think about those things then. Civil rights were not as well known and respected as they are today. The Sun was was like a George Orwell style. Everything was very simple. They didn't call it the Department of Education. They called it the school page. Whether they were writing about graduate school or grammar school or whatever. Well, when I left the Sun, thinking I would be a copy girl for the rest of my life, I went to the Portchester Daily Item. And that was in the Gannett chain, or it was acquired by the Gannett people. So I was a general assignment reporter. I covered parades and cats stuck up in trees, the kind of thing that is sort of the everyday material of a daily newspaper. When I got into magazines, that was a whole new set of skills. It was planning a story and which would come out a couple of months later, you know. It was just a whole different world. I had to think in terms of what will be lasting, what will endure, what will people still go back and read from this magazine. It wasn't just an overnight thing. Here, it's called a packet of snapshots. And it's, I wrote it for, it was published, the Times had a whole series of columns called Hers, and this particular essay was in one of those columns.
What is it about?
It's about finding, as an adult, a whole bunch of pictures, snapshots of houses and children that I realized when I looked through them were the houses that I lived in as a child with my older brother and my younger brother later, and my parents, in all over the Middle West. And finding these snapshots and suddenly being, it's like time travel. All of a sudden, I was back in these places where we had lived. And many of the memories came back to me only because of finding those snapshots. They had not been in my mind at all. I mean, life comes back, it seems to me, and times come back as vividly as, or almost, you know, close, as when I went through them. I would give anything if I could have been, you know, to go back and be a better parent, more understanding, a gentler parent. I think parents rewriting. I've learned over the years that you have to respect what first comes out, because that's the germ, and that's the seed, that's waiting there to grow. But then you have to do a lot of polishing and watering and to continue that metaphor. It won't turn into what you want it to be without a whole lot of